Hi, this is Julie with Beadaholique, and today I want to show you how to make increases with square stitch. And this is a little sample of what we're going to be making. You can see we just keep adding columns. It gets wider and wider. So that is the subject of this particular video. In another video, I showed you how to make decreases, and that's when we get this stepped effect. And you can see an object of that was to make sure we didn't have any thread bridges showing from the top down, and that's going to be the same with this as well. We want to make sure we hide our threads. Now one could say, well, can't you just flip it upside down and then you're making increases? And that is true, but a lot of times when you're thinking about a project, you're thinking about going forward and creating from the front to the end, start to the finish. You're not trying to think backwards. So it is good to know how to do both decreases and increases, and it is a different technique. So what you're going to need is, you're going to need some thread and a needle. And I've placed a little stopper bead here on the end of my thread. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to quickly square stitch 3 beads just so you can see how we begin this. We do have another video on Beadaholique.com dedicated solely to the square stitch. But I've got 3 beads here. I want to make another row of 3, so I'm going to pick up a bead and I'm going to go through in the opposite direction. The last bead I strung on here before I strung the first one for my second row. See, that creates a nice little loop, and when you pull it tight, it sits right on top of the other bead. I'm going to go back through it, grab another bead, do the same thing, and I'm just going to go through just that bead. You don't go through the beads next to it. Again, it just creates a nice little loop here. And we're going to go through that same bead that we just strung. And then one more, and then I'll show you how to make an increase here. So one more, just go through the bead that's going to be below the one on the row that you're creating. And then just up through it again. All right, so there we go. We've technically got 2 rows, 3 columns each. So now I want to go ahead and add a couple more columns. Now, what you're going to need to determine now is how many more do you want to add, because you add enough beads for all of the increase at once on this next row. So let's say you want to do 2. So you're going to add the 2 beads for the next 2 columns, and then you're going to add a 3rd bead, which is going to be the bead on the next row. So you're going to pull these down, and then you're going to separate out that 3rd one because you only wanted to add 2. And now you're going to go back down through what would be the end column, pull, and then go through it again. All right, so you just stepped up and did an increase of 2 columns, and then you've already done your first bead on the next row. Now you can play with, if it's easier for you to flip your beadwork around, go from the opposite direction, whatever you like. So here I added another bead, which is going to be on that top row. I'm going to come through that bead I just strung, so now I've got 2 beads. It can be a little wobbly here to begin with, and you might want to go back and do reinforcement stitching, just going through the rows when you're all done. So at this point for me, I feel like I'm working backwards, and it's a little bit easier for me to just flip my beadwork around. And now I'm just going to square stitch as normal till I get to the other side. One tip when you're bead weaving, sometimes you'll get packs of beads that have a little bit of variation in the size and the shape of the bead. You want to try to pick pretty uniform beads when you're doing a square stitch, just because you want them to line up neat and tidy. All right, one more bead, and then I'm going to need to perform an increase on this side. All right, So we've increased over here, and now we need to make it match if that's your pattern. Sometimes your pattern doesn't call for that. So if you do have a situation like this, I'm going to flip my beadwork again. It's a little easier for me to work in various directions here, and whatever is comfortable for you. I want to do a 2-column increase over here. So just like before, I need to add the 2 beads for my 2 columns, and then I need to add that 3rd bead, because what we're doing is we're having to go around like this. We need to fill it in going almost under, because we don't want to step up. We want to go around so it's even. So I've got my 3 beads. I've slid them down. Again, I'm going to separate out that 3rd one. And I'm going to go back up through what was the 2nd bead I just strung. So you see I've created a nice little loop. I'm going to try to hold it close to my other beadwork. And there we go. We've got that bead there. I'm going to go back through it. And now you can tell we have a gap. We need to fill in that gap, and we're going to do that with just another bead. Try to keep these tight so that they go down towards the other beadwork. We're going to go through it. And now we need to somehow attach it to the side here, so we're going to go through the bead next to it as well and pull through. I want to make sure my thread stays on the right side. And there we go. You might need to coax it a little if it tries to bend on you. You need your thread to come out the side again. So we're just going to go up through these beads here. And that's going to help keep them in place too, because you're reinforcing it. So there we performed an increase. I want to show you this one more time, just because I know this can be a little confusing because you do a different technique on each side. So I want to increase again by 2. So I've got my 2 beads on my needle, and then I need my 3rd bead, which is going to be the 1st bead of the next row. So those line up like so. I'm going to take my needle and go through the 2nd bead I strung on my increase section and pull. Okay, so that just made that go up there. So there's your next row that started. And then I'm going to pick up another bead and go through the bead directly below it, pull. Now I'm just going to square stitch all the way to the end until I need to perform that increase on the other side using that slightly different method. All right, so we're back to the other side. We need to increase to make it even. So we're going to add 2 more columns. So we add the 2 beads, add the 3rd bead. For me, it works easiest if I just flip it over. And so these 2 are going to be a pair. So I just want to go through that 2nd bead. I'm trying to hold my beadwork close. If it gets a little bit wobbly in there in a gap, you can just scoot it down with your nail. Going back through the bead I just stitched in place. I'm going to add a bead to fill in the gap. Go through the bead that's going to be on top of it. Back around and through, and now we're going to go through not just that bead, but the bead next to it on the main area to anchor it. You can almost think of it as making loops. It's almost what it feels like with your thread. All right, so if I was going to keep going and keep stitching, I would then go back up through here and all of these. But what I would recommend, especially with this stitch, is doing a little bit of reinforcing. So when you're all done, what I would do is I would just keep going through all these beads. Or you can even do this midway, actually. You don't have to be finished with your work to do reinforcement stitching. It's just always a good idea. And then to just reinforce this, Just go through all of them and pull. It just adds just a little bit more steadiness to it. It makes it a little bit more sturdy. And technically, I'm right where I wanted to be to keep performing more increases, so you could do that midway. So there's a little sample of how you perform increases when you're doing square stitch. You'll see we don't see any threads from the top down, which is what we wanted. It's quite easy to do once you get the hang of it. It's just a matter of holding your beads in place, making sure they don't wobble too much, and keeping your tension uniform. So you can find this video and others on Beadaholique.com in the free tutorial section.